Hello everyone, this is Ashley Tucker. Thank you for joining me today. Today I'm sharing a card where I use the I Still Do stamp set, which is a brand new set from Simon Says Stamp and CZ Design. I started by taking a piece of Arches cold pressed watercolor paper and taping it down to a board. I wanted to create a watercolor background for my card, which has kind of that messy watercolor look. So for that, I'm using a number 12 round watercolor brush. The paints that I'm using are from the Gansai Tambi watercolor set of 36, and as you can see, I'm just dabbing that paint on, and I'm dabbing it onto dry paper. I did not wet down the paper before I started painting. Even though I'm going for a messy look with this background and I'm just dabbing that paint on there, I'm still controlling where the paint goes. And that's because I have yellows and purples on this. And those are complementary colors, and when you mix them together, you usually get brown. And I really didn't want brown for this background, so I'm making sure that those two colors aren't mixing together. The Gansai Tambi watercolors, especially when you put them onto dry paper, are very pigmented, and that's actually not the look I was really going for. So at this point, while the paint was still wet, I took a paper towel and I dabbed up some of that color, and I really liked the effect that that created, so I kept it like that and I didn't add any more paint. I did, however, really want to darken up the edges on this painting because I really liked the idea of a vignette on it. So I picked out some different colors of Distress Oxide ink that I thought really matched the colors of paint that I used, and then I added those around the border with my blending tools. This next step is probably not necessary because it didn't actually change the painting very much, but I wanted to leave it in the video so that I could show you my whole process. I took some clean water and I sprinkled it onto the panel, and I let it sit so that it could soak up some of that ink, and then I pulled up that ink with a paper towel. And as you can see, it really doesn't change it very much. There's only a few little drops that it actually pulled up. After that, I very carefully pulled the tape off, and then I cut this background down to 3 3/4 by 5. I picked out a couple of the stamps from the I Still Do stamp set, and I placed them in my Misti, and I stamped them onto that background panel with Versafine Onyx Black ink. And I did have to stamp that a couple of times to get a good impression because that Arches cold pressed watercolor paper is a very textured watercolor paper. I picked out a third stamp from the set, and I prepped a piece of black cardstock with a powder bag for embossing. I then stamped the sentiment with Versamark ink, and I embossed it with ALABASTER white embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. I cut this sentiment down into a strip, and I used some scissors in order to add some ribbon edges to both sides. I added a bunch of foam tape onto the back of my watercolor panel, and I popped it up onto an A2 size white card base. I then took the black sentiment strip and I popped it up right underneath that circle of hearts. I could have left the card like this, but I wanted to add even more detail, so I took out a Copic marker. This is an R20 Copic marker, and I filled in all of those little hearts. Now, some people say that you probably shouldn't use your Copic markers on a textured paper like this because it could ruin the nib, but I've never had a problem, so I went ahead and felt free to do that. So if you're worried about your Copic markers, you could use any kind of marker in order to do that. You don't have to use a Copic. Once I finished filling in all of those hearts, I took a slightly darker marker and I gave each of them a little bit of a shadow. And then I took my Nuvo crystal glaze and I filled in each heart to give them some gloss and some dimension. For the final touches on the card, I went over the black sentiment strip with my Wink of Stella glitter brush to make it nice and sparkly. And then I took a T-square ruler and my white gel pen and I added a border around the edge of the watercolor panel. After that, this card is all done, and I tell you what, if you're looking for a great stamp set for anniversary cards, this one is definitely worth checking out. Kathy Zilski never disappoints. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you really enjoyed today's card design. If you're interested in any of the supplies that I used, I'll have it all posted below in the description. If you enjoyed watching today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I have a new card coming your way really soon. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.